It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Updates, the show where I update my main and test decks for you on my quest to brew the magic world. As always, the deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, leave me a comment what you think. Check out the links in the description. I'd really appreciate it. Today we're covering the last of the main decks, and definitely not least in Pantlaza, Sun Favored. A Naya Dinosaur Commander 4/4 that says whenever it or another dino enters the battlefield under our control, we can discover X, where X is that creature's toughness. Do this once each turn. A loving reminder that Discover says that you exile cards at the top of your library until you hit a spell with that mana value equal to it or less. And you get a choice. You can either cast it for free or you can put it into your hand. And I do like that a little bit more than Cascade, because there are definitely times where you might discover into, I don't know, an X spell that you then have to be forced to cast for 0 and you don't really want to cast it, or a removal spell that maybe isn't good at the time you discovered into it, but it would be a lot better in your hand. And I think that's what makes Discover really good. So let's talk about what we're going to do. We're going to play Dinos. At the end of the day, if you don't like Dinos, you're not going to play a Dino deck, and this deck is very good at playing Dinos. It's really cool to me to see what Dinos look like back in Ixalan the first time we were there, when I was younger in my Magic journey and trying to build Gishaft, to now with all of these dinosaurs from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and even some of the ones we've gotten since then. But it's not just about playing dinosaurs. We want to try to cheat them in, and there's a bunch of ways we could do that. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about more ways we're going to try to discover. In fact, we want to try to discover as many times as we can on each dinosaur coming in at once per turn, so we can get lots of value. And then we're going to stomp, baby. I feel like you're not playing a dinosaur deck if you don't want to get into combat and do some combat. And believe me, that's what this deck is trying to do. Well, as far as dinosaurs go, we're going to pretty much run the gambit of a mixture of new and old dinosaurs alike. But I think we have a lot of dinosaurs now that have really great utility. Bonehard Dracosaur lets us exile the top 2 at the start of our turn, and we can play them this turn. If we exile a land, we get a 3/1 dino. If we exile a non-land card, we get a treasure. And what this is going to do is allow us to extend our hand a little bit, have some extra options, but also just gets more value. One of my favorite of the newer dinos that was printed in the Commander deck is Bronzebeak Foragers. When it enters the battlefield for each opponent, you just exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until it leaves the battlefield. This locks down a key permanent that our opponents have that we don't want them to have. And then we do have the option for X and a white to put a card with mana value X exiled with it back in its opponent's in their graveyard and gain X life. So if somebody tries to remove the Foragers, let's say, to get their thing back, well, if you had the mana, could just put it back in their graveyard, or we could do it to just get some value. I actually once had a game with Bronzebeak Foragers where I had to exile a card underneath it to keep myself alive for a turn so that I could win the game. So it just goes to show you what it can do in that scenario. Earthshaker Dreadmaw, of course, the spiritual successor to Colossal Dreadmaw, says that when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card for each other dino you control, and that could draw you a lot of cards if put down at the right time. Hulking Raptor at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase adds 2 green mana, a great way to give you a little bit of ramp every turn. Koglin Yudaro comes down with your choice of trample and haste or to fight something you don't control. You can pay 4 and discard it to destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment and shuffle back into your library from your graveyard and draw a card. So there is an option to use it for removal. A lot of times you're either going to have a hasty 7/7 with trample and haste come in. Remember that you're then discovering off Pantlaza for 7, or you can just have it fight something if need be. It's great utility. Polani's Hatcher is one of our haste enablers in the deck, giving other dinos haste. And whenever it comes in, you make 2 eggs, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you could sack an egg and make a 3/3 dino. So not bad either, and it gives that dino haste, right? This is a great way to give all of our dinos haste, and not a bad thing to discover into off one of our big dinos coming in. Pugnacious Hammerskull is a great example of a dino that doesn't cost us very much, but it's going to discover for a good amount of 3 mana 6/6. So it's going to come in and discover for 6. And it says whenever it attacks, if we don't control a dinosaur, you put a stun counter on it. But we're almost going to always have a dinosaur laying around for Pugnacious Hammerskull, but just a great discover 6 for just 3 mana. Ravenous Tyrannosaurus, one of our few Jurassic World cards we're playing, but it's a gray one. Comes in with, has Devour 3. So as it comes in, we could sack a number of creatures. If we do, put 3 times that many counters on it. And whenever it attacks, it deals damage equal to its powered up to 1 other target creature, and excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. A lot of the times I haven't really been putting counters onto Ravenous Tyrannosaurus by sacking creatures, but it's nice because when you're attacking, let's say you have something that's giving it a +5/+5 buff, and now you're just hitting a creature for 11 and dumping excess damage through, getting damage through to another opponent while Ravenous, Tyrannosaurus is attacking something else. So it's a great tacker for that. It doesn't have trample, but I think that's okay because we have so many other ways in the deck to give it trample. Regal Behemoth, when it enters the battlefield, we become the Monarch, and then as long as we're the Monarch, whenever we tap a land for mana, we can add additional mana of any color. This is a great ability to turn our turns into even more explosive. Regisaur Alpha is our other haste enabler, giving all dinosaurs haste. And then when it comes in, it makes a 3/3 dino with trample. So another way, again, give them all haste. It doesn't give itself haste, but it gives you something that can attack that turn. The Carnosaur, when it comes in, is going to discover 5. This pairs really nicely with Pantlaza because on the turn you're putting Carnosaur in, you're discovering for 6 and you're discovering for 5, and it's your choice which way you want to do that. And you can pitch it to deal some damage if you want to. But I really love the idea of getting 2 Discover triggers for just 6 mana with Pantlaza out. And then if you have anything else, right, you're going to get more from it. Tyrannix Rex, one of my favorites that may not be as sexy as some other dinosaurs, but I think it's a dino that is still a threat to your opponents. An 8/8 dino for 7. Has trample, toxic 4, ward 4, and haste. So it's going to be tough to remove from the battlefield. It has haste, so it's going to be able to hit the turn it comes down. And toxic 4 will take a couple turns to become a problem. But if you were to give it double strike or anything fancy like that, you could potentially make toxic more of a threat to your opponents. But again, at the end of the day, it's just an 8/8 with ward 4 that our opponents are going to have a tough time dealing with single target removal. Voltborn Tyrant's probably one of my favorite of the newer dinosaurs that we've seen, because whenever it or another creature power 4 or greater comes in under our control, we gain 3 life and draw a card. This reminds me a lot of something like Garruk's Uprising, right? Which has a very similar ability, but just drawing a card. And then when it dies, if it's not a token, you make a token that's a copy of it. So Voltborn Tyrant kind of says, hey, you got to get rid of me twice, and I'm going to get the token and have it come back and still draw me cards and gain me life. It is very easy with the way that this deck cheats in dinosaurs to gain 9 or 12 life in a turn and draw a couple cards and still be a big threat. Wrathful Raptors is just really fun. Whenever a dinosaur is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to a target that isn't a dinosaur. This with at least, at least 9 dinosaurs on board is a 2-card combo for a kill on our opponents with Blasphemous Act, which deals 13 damage to each dinosaur. Wrathful would see all of our dinosaurs being dealt 13 damage by Blasphemous Act, put its triggers, as long as all 3 of your opponents have less than 39 life, that would be enough to knock out the board. If you go up to 12, of course, then it's a full knockout no matter what. But it is fun to know that combo's in the deck if you can locate it together. Zakama Primal Calamity is a great dino, a big top-end dino, 9 mana, 9/9. But if we cast it and it comes in, we get to untap all of our lands and keep going. And that's great. It doesn't have haste, but remember, there's a lot of other ways in the deck to give it haste. Well, let's talk about cheating things in, right? Because at the end of the day, I think this is the easiest way for us to really take advantage of both Pantlaza's ability and all the big dinos that we have access to. You have things like Atali Primal Conqueror, that when it comes in, everybody exiles from the top of their library until they hit a non-land card. We can cast all of them for free. This is a great way to not only get great value from our opponents, but maybe get something of ours for free as well. Probably one of my favorite cheat-in outlets is Galta Stampede Tyrant, which is when it enters, we can just put all creature cards from our hand onto the battlefield. This is great because if you can find one of those haste naming dinos in your hand, this turns into a pretty brutal combination of getting a bunch of dinos down in one turn. There's always the classic of Gishath, right? Got that beautiful borderless reprint in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top, and you can put any number of dinos in. This is a great way to get some dinos in every turn if you have Gishath out. But even in my dozen games having Gishath in the deck, have yet to hit somebody with it because I think everybody knows what Gishath does so well, and they don't want to see it happen. Another great way to cheat in dinos is Hunting Velociraptor. This is a card I've seen work time and time again. First striking 3/2 that says dinosaur spells you cast have Prowl 2 and a red. So if our opponent took combat damage this turn with one of our creatures, then it gets, they get Prowl. And that's really nice because then we could cheat something like Galta in for 2 and a red and take real advantage of that. Savage Order is another great way to go get something like Galta specifically. You sack creature power 4 greater and just go get a dino, put it on the battlefield. It gets indestructible. Not a bad thing. Again, the best, right, when you have a haste enabler in your hand, something that you can cheat in. Or let's say you need haste enabler, or you need one of these other big dinos for something. Well, go get it. Savage Order brings it in with indestructible, and now you have that ability. And then there's the classic sneak attack game plan. Pay a red, put a creature from our hand on the battlefield. It gets haste, and you sack it at the beginning of the next end step. I really love this for something like Galta, or even something like Earthshaker, Dreadmaw, where you just draw a bunch of cards because you're just getting value no matter what, and you're just paying one red for it. And I don't think you mind giving up either of those creatures dying at the end of the turn to get all the value you get when they enter the battlefield. I think that is really important. Well, how do we discover more? Well, there's a lot of ways to approach this, right? You have Sunfurl Imitator from the decks that when it attacks, it can become a copy of another dino, except it keeps its name. This is really nice because then we can technically have 2 copies of Pantlaza out, both giving us that discover trigger once per turn, meaning we get extra discover that way. Contest of Claws says we pick a creature we control and it deals damage equal to its power to another creature. And if excess damage was dealt, we could discover X, where X is that much of damage. A great way to take something like Galta with 12 power and probably discover for 7 or 8 or plus, and just get a big discover extra that turn. We have the pair of Cloud Shift and Ephemerate as options to just blink a creature and bring it back in. Remember, the Pantlaza says once per turn, not once per hour turn. So on our opponent's turn, we could blink one of our dinosaurs to get a discover trigger on their turn. And I really like Ephemerate because it says that when we cast it with Rebound, we exile it at the beginning of our next upkeep. We can do it again. We can cast it again. This is really nice because if we still have something like Galta out when we would go to untap, we can blink it again. And I think we'd want to discover for 12, on our turn, and we'd be more okay with that. But the one enchantment, of course, I've seen put in a lot of work, and I expected it to, was Monstrous Vortex. It says when you cast a creature spell with mana with power 5 or greater, you discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. So here, you get to discover before it hits the battlefield. And then Pantlaza would have it discover when it hits the battlefield. So a way to get kind of some more discover on our plate. And the Touch the Spirit Realm is kind of a two-sided card. It's removal in the sense that when it comes in, you can exile up to one target artifact or creature until it leaves the battlefield. But we very rarely use Touch the Spirit Realm for that. Where we're using it is for its channel ability. That says we can exile target artifact or creature and return it to its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. This is a great way to either blink one of our dinosaurs on somebody else's turn to get the discover. But this is also nice to protect a dinosaur on somebody else's turn. If somebody board wipes, we really want to keep Pants around, and we really want to keep one of our other dinos around. Well, we just channel this, exile at the beginning of the next end step, and it's very hard to respond to this channel trigger. There's not a lot of counter spells out there that do that. There are, right? Disallow and things like that. But they are not as common as other counterspells, meaning this channel ability is going to be very hard to interact with for our opponents, and most of the time it's going to go through unscathed. But hey, we want to stomp, right? And that's what we're here to do. Dinosaurs on a Spaceship gives all of our dinosaurs +1/+1 vigilance and trample. Great way to have them be able to attack and block. Invasion of Ikoria is a way to search up a non-human, but the backside Zalortha, Apex of Ikoria, says that for each non-human creature we control, we can have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So that's pretty nice, allowing us to get more damage through. Chroma's Will, that beautiful finisher, if we have Pants out, can give them a laundry list of abilities, and it's very difficult to lose a game once you have Chroma's Will and hit for all that damage, gain all that life, and knock 1 or 2 players out. Garrick's Uprising, like we talked about for Vaultborn Tyrant, giving us some card draw, but it also gives all of our creatures trample. And then Mirari's Wake, kind of very similar to that Regal Behemoth style effect, where it lets us get additional mana whenever we tap a land for mana, but we also get to buff all of our creatures by +1/+1. So you could see just a way to give some extra benefits to the board. But as far as our recent adds to Pantlaza, obviously Duskborn or Bloomburrow did not add any dinosaurs. So of course there were no new Stompy Boys to add to the deck. But what it did do is add a couple lands that I think are really worth it for the deck. We had a Hushwood Verge and Thornspire Verge. And the main reason is because we are playing ramp spells to get us things like Jetmir's Triumph, Jetmir's Garden, which has a triple land typing. So we're going to have, most time we're going to have a land of the opposite of these types, forest, plains, and mountain down. So to me, I view these lands like I view the check lands, where they're going to almost always going to be allow us to give both their colors. And so I think they're almost no-brainers in the deck, considering what we already have the deck built to do. We're playing things like Cinderglade and Canopy Vista, so we already have more lands that have dual typings. So they're going to be in here, and they're going to be usable almost all the time. Three Tree City might look a little odd because we're not going to go as wide as probably some of the other decks that really want to use Three Tree City. But I think Three Tree City is important because it is going to be a win more card in some senses. It's going to be like Nykthos, right? Where as long as you can put up a solid amount into it, it's going to be able to pay you back, right? The thought is that 2 lands plus 3 Tree Cities, 3. So as long as it's producing more than 4 or more mana, well, we're profiting off of 3 Tree City, right? So that's my thought, is as long as I can keep 4 more dinos out at a time, I think 3 Tree City is going to be profitable for us. Obviously, if we're not, then it's a colorless land that maybe might feel clunky in some decks. So it's good to keep in mind at the end of the day, the 3 Tree City needs a certain threshold to be profitable. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. Even though I've had this deck together since Lost Caverns of Ixalan came out, and I've been testing it, iterating, I think there's a lot of things we can learn. And the main card that's been on my list since Modern Horizons 3 came out is Sawhorn Nemesis, a 4-mana 2/4. This is when it enters, you choose a player, and if a source we control will deal damage to the chosen player or permanent they control, it deals double that damage instead. I think everything on Sawhorn Nemesis makes sense. I just cannot figure out what dino to cut for it. My problem with this deck is that every dino in this deck does something really well. Whether it's a big creature for a cheap cost that's going to give us a good discover trigger, whether it's a utility creature gives something like haste, whether it's something that cheats in, whether it's something that prevents damage or exiles permanents. I just don't know what to cut for Sawhorn Nemesis. It's the same as Marauding Raptor. It's a reducer, and it's a great reducer at that. The only reason I don't have Marauding Raptor in the deck is because I do play Polyraptor, and I don't want to start a scenario where it's create an infinite loop with Marauding Raptor and Polyraptor. So that's the main reason Marauding Raptor isn't in there. But same argument, I like Polyraptor. Polyraptor is good for its cost, and it has a great ability. And I don't want to set up a scenario where I lose the game or draw a game because I'm not able to maintain my own combo. And the Skullspore Nexus has been in and out. It came out on this last iteration because I really liked the card, but I wanted to try some other cards. But I think that Skullspore Nexus makes sense to come back in because it's very good at what it does, making tokens when other creatures die and doubling creatures' power. It's a great card. It comes down for double green most of the time. I just kind of wanted to give some chances for other slots in the deck to try a few other things out, and then Skullspore Nexus will probably come back in. But I'll be 100% honest, I never felt like a game was won or lost by the Skullspore Nexus. It was almost always just there in my games. But I can see a lot of scenarios where it would be really good and why I should care about it. Here we are keeping a 2-lander with 3 visits, Wayward Sawtooth, that Koglan Eudora, and a Polyraptor. So we do have the option to ramp there off the 3 visits. Not a bad hand. We have a Quartzwood Crasher, which again, 1 more toughness than its cost, so it's great for pants. Same thing with Koglan Eudora. And then Polyraptor can make copies of itself when it's dealt damage, which is nice if we block with it, right? Because then we can get pants triggers on everybody else's turn. So turn 1, we draw Forest. That's A-okay. Let's get the Commercial District in, which is going to let us surveil 1 for a Rockfall Veil. All right, so that's great because now we can just get this Forest down and go ahead and 3 visits, and it allows us to go get a Forest card from our deck. And in this scenario, we're almost always going to go ahead and get Jetmir's Garden, so we can get all 3 of our colors. So now we're on our way, right? We're on our way to be in great shape to get towards Pantlaza. Now this turn, we can do something really fun now that we have 2 lands in our hand. That's Wayward Swordtooth, which says we can pay an additional land on each of our turns. So we can play the Swordtooth plus these 2 lands. And now we're ready to go for next turn. What I will probably do instead is play the Rith's Grove. No, I think I'll wait till next turn because I have to bounce a land to play it, but I think I might as well wait till after I use it. Because if I do it here, I'm actually going down a land, so I think I'll wait for it for next turn. Remember that Wayward Swordtooth can't attack or block unless I have the City's Blessing, which is 10 total. 10 total permanent. So we're still a turn off really being able to use Wayward Swordtooth. But we'll play Pantlaza. We're gonna go ahead and discover for 4. We get Kadama's Reach. Now this is the one nice thing about the deck is that we have access to a lot of cheap ramp underneath 4 mana. So a lot of the times we might be able to, just as easy as we did here, get ourselves into some ramp. So we'll put a Forest in tapped. We'll go Plains into our hand. Play that Rith's Grove, picking up one of those. And now we're in great shape next turn. We're going to be at 7 mana next turn on turn 5 and just be able to get to go. We are only at 2. So we're only at 9 permanents, so Wayward's Earthquake can't attack yet, but that's A-okay. The point is we're still rocking forward. Play the land for turn, so 8 mana. A lot of ways we can look at this. I mean, Polyraptor will discovers for 5. Kogla and Yudaro discovers for 7 and can attack this turn. So I kind of like Kogla and Yudaro here. Pay the 7 for it. We get to discover for 7 into a Wrathful Raptors. Okay, so that's not bad by any means. Now we've got some protection. If people damage any of our dinos, we can start damaging them back. And I probably just full swing here now that I can swing. I mean, they don't have trample, but turn 5, we're going to probably have some great attacks. Remember, Kogla and Yudaro does have trample and haste until end of turn, so not bad at all. And now, right, we do have half of that combo if we want to use it. It's funny that we also pull something like Flawless Maneuver, which could protect our board while the Blasphemous Act combo happens. But that's not the point at this point. The point is we have a ton of mana, and we're just going to start working our way towards more, right? So the Cinderglade comes in untapped because we have 2 or more basics. 9 mana. I love Polyraptor, but something like Quartzwood Caller is great as well. We'll play the Quartzwood just so that way in case we get something else we want to play for 4 mana, we can. We'll do that. It'll come in and discover for 6, and that is Trumpeting Carnosaur. Okay. So if I do the Carnosaur this turn, I'll only be able to discover 5, but I think it's still worth it in my head. I mean, we really would love to ideally get some way to get some haste into our board or something, and we get a Patchwork Banner. Okay. Not ideal, but the nice part about the banner is we're now buffing our entire board +1/+1. So now we actually do have 5 mana. I'll just keep up the Flawless Maneuver. But again, take a big attack here. We have 1 creature with trample, so if it deals damage, we're actually going to get a dinosaur token off of the Quartzwood Crasher. Again, I think we're just in good shape here. If people block, we can dole some damage out with the Raptors. I think all we are is 1 kind of more buffy or trample enably type way to just deal some big damage. Remember, these 2 both have trample, so next turn, Quartzwood Crasher is going to make us a decent sized dinosaur with that ability. So we'll go 1 more turn here to turn at 7. I can't do Polyraptor and Cultivate, so I think I'll just try Polyraptor. Because I'd love to hit something offensive. I mean, otherwise, I could potentially get a big Discover trigger off this dinosaur that's made. But let's do Polyraptor for 5 for Contest of Claws. Okay, well, that's not too bad. I would pick, I guess, Kogla and Yudaro. It's an 8/8 right now, right? Have it deal damage to something. Let's say we probably end up discovering for, I'd guess, something like 5. Well, there we go. Up the Beanstalk's going to draw us a card. Now we're not in bad shape. Again, take an attack this turn. Our couple of trample enablers are going to potentially make us a dinosaur token off of that Quartzwood Crasher. We've got the Flawless Maneuver to protect the board. And I mean, we're just 1 more turn. Again, just continuing to push our advantage. Remember that with Blasphemous Act and Wrathful Raptors, we have enough damage to knock probably 2 people out on turn 7. So if we took this a turn to try to knock 1 person out or really focus our damage on 1 person, next turn we could Flawless Maneuver to protect our creatures until our next turn, and then we would be able to just Blasphemous Act and probably end the game, right? Dealing 13 to each because of that Wrathful Raptors. This would be 39 and this would be 39, so we would be able to probably knock 2 players out at a pretty good shot of it. But let's get into playtest number 2. I think we've kind of shown how we bust in the mid game here. Keeping a 3-lander with Ursus Incubator, Invasion of Ikoria, Tyrannix Rex, and Kogla and Yudaro. Remember, that's search your library and graveyard for a non-human creature with mana value X or less and put on the battlefield. So it's kind of nice to get some utility depending on exactly what you need. Turn 1, might as well put that Cinderglade in tap because that'll turn on the Sunpetal Grove to come in untapped. And I mean, there's nothing we want to do on turn 1 anyway. Turn 2, I mean, we can get Sun Petal Grown. We can go get something for 0 for the invasion, but I don't really see the point. I think we're just kind of working our way up here. Turn 3, we'll play the Incubator, right? Calling Dinosaurs. So now we can play Pantlaza next turn because it's only going to cost us 3 mana. This is, I think, a good way to keep building our way up, and we don't mind taking turn 3 to do that. Turn 4, play the Command Tower. Now we'll play Pants for just 3 mana. Get to Discover for 4 into Flare of Cultivation. So this is just like Cultivate, but you have the option to cast it for free by sacking a green creature, non-token green creature. But it's okay. We play it for free off of the Discover. So 2 basic lands, 1 tapped, 1 into our hand. 2 white sources, 4 green sources, 2 red sources. So I think we need red into hand. Let's go white and tap just to give ourselves some more spread on all of our colors. That is 1 mana left, which I don't really particularly have anything for, so we'll just call it and move on to our next turn. Now we're at 6, everything costing 2 less, so we could do something like Tyrannix Rex for 5 mana. We could do Kogla for 4 mana and leave up some other mana for something like Path to Exile, or we could also play Curious Altasaur as well. I think Kogla makes the most sense to start. We're going to Discover for 7, getting Atali. Okay, well, Atali's great. And then we have 2 mana left. I mean, the question becomes, if I'm worried about one of my opponents, I probably do something like Path of Exile and leave it up. Leave the removal up for one of our opponent's creatures. Otherwise, I can play this Curious Altasaur for just 2 mana. And then when Kogla attacks this turn, it's probably going to hit somebody, right? And that would draw me a card. My other thought with Curious Altasaur is then if I wanted to do something like a Chroma's Will next turn, I would have more creatures down to do it. Remember, Tyrannix is going to cost me 5, so I don't have enough mana to do that. But I think I'm going to do it. I'll attack with Kogla, and there's no way I probably don't draw a card this turn. Off of that having Trample, right? This turn is a 7/7. And then Pants would attack. I mean, I guess there's probably a world where it draws this turn as well at a board. Maybe it doesn't, but let's say that it does for the purposes of this, so we get that card draw. Turn 6, we'll play 3 Tree City, so right now it's going positive on mana. And this is kind of a sneaky way to get this Chroma's Will off, right? Because we could pay 2 into it and tap for it to pay 2 in it and tap it to get a bunch of white mana, right? We have 4 creatures at the moment. So, is there any way I can do this? Wrinkle Behemoth would be 4. It would make us the Monarch. It's a shame that a Chroma's Will doesn't give the creatures haste. We still need to pay attention to what we have access to there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're just 1 mana off of being able to play the Tyrannix Rex and the Chroma's Will, or being able to do that. Maybe we could do something like Dread Mob. That's going to draw me a ton of cards, and I don't really want to pitch to turn. Okay, let's go down to 5. We're just 1 away. I could take the risk of discovering into a Mana Rock, but just feels awkward. I think we're better off doing the Regal Behemoth. Go ahead and Discover for 5. We see an Ephemerate. I think we're better off putting it into hand, right? We've already done the Discover, so I don't think I win. Unless I really wanted to fight something, right? I could blink the Kogonidaro to fight. I mean, I guess I'm going to use the rest of my mana for the... Well, I would have the extra mana, I guess. And this would tap for 5, right? 5, and then the 1 extra from Regal Behemoth, that would be 6. So I could have the extra mana. Let's put it into hand. Then I would go ahead into Chrome as well. Again, these 4 can attack. They're going to get all of these buffs. So Double Strike, Lifelink, Flying, Vigilance, Indestructible, and Pro all colors. So that's 14, 22, 34, and 38. So we have a good risk on 1 person. But remember that when Atali attacks, right, we're going to do everybody's thing. Just exile the top and can play him if need be. Maybe that gets us some more value. But otherwise, here's a big attack. It's going to gain us a ton of life. And we could always, keep Ephemerate up or something. Or we could always have used the Ephemeria there if we wanted to, but otherwise, I think it's just worth it. You get a bunch of damage. We're going to draw a couple cards. And we didn't play a land this turn, so we could play the Forest. I think, unfortunately, we're just going to be having to pitch a card or two. We'll pitch the Dreadmaw. Sneak attack. I think we're a little bit past sneak attack. And I mean, now on our turn, we draw a card at the start of the end step for the Monarch. So we'll pitch the Sword Tooth, and I can always get it back. And do that. I mean, our opponents have the option to wipe our board here, but if they don't, you know, I think we have a good chance to go off next turn and still establish some value. But let me know, what do you think of Pants down in the comment section below? Love this deck. It's a ton of fun to play. It's a ton of fun to discover, get the dinosaurs going, get to play a fun mix of new and old dinosaurs. Carnage Tyrant as an old dino. You know, Waking Sun's avatars, the no one, Vaultborn, or old one, you know, Vaultborn is the new ones. That's cool to kind of see them mix and see some of the value that the deck can generate, and it's been a ton of fun. But let me know what you think of Pants down in the comment section below, and I catch you guys next time.